Google, or at least I cannot start recording.
All right, it's
That's
good.
it. My job is done. Nobody needs to talk anymore.
All right. I guess the first thing on the agenda, Stephen, I think you were looking at last week's meeting minutes, and I think you have some clarification questions. I believe you're in progress of writing the sandwich documents as well. So I just want to make sure, we got your clarification question answered. So, Stephen, I believe one of the question is there a consensus people feel sandwich is worth pursuing? Because some of the notes was reflecting of re-architect waypoint and clients be able to connect over Edgebone doesn't provide any guarantee about clients being aware or supporting any Istio mesh Edgebone feature. And people were thinking about we should re-architecting waypoint, but not deferring to Z-tunnel helping. I think we had a clarification on whether that means Z-tunnel sandwich was or something else.
I think that just the high-level point then was, is sandwich viable?
Right.
Like we need to design.
No, I guess the question would also be, is sandwich the thing, do we have consensus from last week? Is sandwich the thing we should pursue to see if it's viable? I think, Stephen, maybe you had some question around that. That was my impression, but I was not completely sure because we had a 5 minutes conversation right before this call.
Stephen, can you, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Okay, he's not muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay, good.
I chose the wrong microphone, I guess. I was like really confused. I'm like, okay. Before I go, Costin, do you want to chime in?
Just want to rephrase it a bit. It's clear that some form of sandwich will be needed because there will be Nginx server, all kind of other gateways and tools that are not natively Istio. So there is no question that we want or we don't want sandwich. Sandwich will happen because people will run all kind of software on top of Z-tunnel. The question is how much we want to optimize it, how much to document it, but I cannot imagine a world where we don't have the sandwich.
Fair, but I guess the main question I was confused with when I was kind of just reviewing meeting notes is we kind of talked about sandwiches for sidecars a little bit last week, but I left the meeting a few minutes early. And I do see something that says consensus, the sidecar will remain waypoint aware. That sort of makes sense. It's an Istio thing, so being aware of something that's part of Istio's design is reasonable. But
so I think
so we can sandwich many different things. So
I think there's an interesting question there. Z-tunnel is waypoint aware. If Z-tunnel is waypoint aware and we can sandwich a sidecar, does sandwich need to be waypoint aware? I don't actually know, right? So that's, I think, a question to be answered.
What do you mean does the sandwich Z-tunnel need to be aware?
So let's say a sidecar wants to talk to a service. Z-tunnel is service aware. The sidecar does its thing, and then it just sends traffic to the service VIP, which Z-tunnel goes, oh, that should go through a waypoint. That means that the sidecar didn't need to know that it had to go through a waypoint. Z-tunnel took on that responsibility.
If so that's an Z-tunnel, you could say that the sidecar knows about it if the sandwich Z-tunnel is in pod or something. It's a third sidecar or third pod.
Or but it's just kind of a delegation of responsibility thing, right? If Z-tunnel, regardless of how you put it, sandwiched the sidecar, knew about waypoint, then that probably meant the sidecar didn't have to. And does that make the sidecar easy, right? And is that possible, or is there a problem?
Yeah. So that is as far as I can tell, that should be completely possible. The only question is how do you like? Do you just go and say, okay, now it's this sidecar wants to take advantage of sandwich, so update policy to be like permissive?
Oh, well, that I think right. I think that's a different topic than waypoint awareness.
Well, yeah, I mean, sandwich, I think, is the answer to the topic of waypoint awareness. Like Z-tunnels will
Okay.
be aware.
Yes,
That's
Z-
the question.
One tiny comment. I mean, there are three different topics here. I mean, sandwich on ingress, sandwich on egress, but there is security that we need to discuss here. So a Istio sidecar, if it's an L7, because that's really the interesting case, will have to do routing, will do load balancing at L7, and as a result, will create, an IP. I mean, we'll have an endpoint IP, not service. It cannot go to a service and let Z-tunnel do the load balancing. So there is some awareness in terms of load balancing. Because
yes,
again, you cannot do HTTP.
I think there's a hybrid there, though, Custon.
Yes,
Yes,
I agree.
right.
And
Clearly, the sidecar needs to open multiple TCP connections to do L7 load balancing. I agree. Like how it gets them, right? We could discuss.
And then there is the persistence. There are all kinds of things that happen at L7 that Z-tunnel doesn't know. TLS definitely can be done can be sandwiched. But even for TLS, we need to be very careful because the problem with pod-to-pod communication is that we lose information about the peer, and we're susceptible to the small delays in propagation and all the other problems. So we need to figure out a way, if we do sandwich, to propagate the information about the service IP VIP as well as the IP. So maybe either to the SOCs or some more specific integration where we do sandwich for TLS, but we pass the information we need from the sidecar.
Yeah, so I think there's clearly the XDS configuration of the sidecar would have to change, right? And the control plane would have to be aware. Like, let's say you're going to talk to a VIP, but you want to do L7 load balancing across the VIP. One thing we could do is we could say, open multiple connections to the VIP, but still treat it as a VIP, right? Just like an L3 network would. And so basically it's like DNS, like to IP resolution, but you're saying, look, this is actually load balanced, so have N connections to it. Right, and then it's Z-tunnel's responsibility to give connection diversity when people ask for multiple connections to the same VIP. But you get L7 load balancing. Right, we could do some simplifications like that. That would allow Z-tunnel to preserve the VIP identity directly without the sidecar having to know it, right? Which would simplify it. So there are some variety of ways to skin that cat. That would be worth looking at. Proxy protocol is another one. If VIP was resolved, did that say by something like DNS SRV? But we also have the problem, like some people just talk directly to pod IDs, right? And what does that mean? Right, we have that problem anyway. So. But making VIPs more synthetic might actually be a good thing, right? Keith, yes. But like those things have to be gone through in detail, right? Like maybe we should try and enumerate the questions that we want to be able to answer rather than trying to solve them here. Just so we give Stephen some time to.
That would be really good.
All right, so how should a sidecar compose of the Z-tunnel? And what we do about service and VIP discovery? Because there's a bunch of options there. What would we do about auto MTLS permissive? How does that work? What do we do with non-HBone clients doing legacy TLS, right, during upgrade phases?
What do you, can you expand on that? I'm not sure what that
So let's say, well, I guess it's like, what are the theoretical upgrade paths? Let's say we have current version of Sidecar that does everything. You go into a cluster and you install ztunnel on every node. Right, so we get the ability to sandwich via the CNI hook, but we have to know whether to actually sandwich or not, and what responsibilities ztunnel should pick up on behalf of the sidecar. Right, so they need to kind of know a little bit about each other during the upgrade phase. So what would be the ideal upgrade path? And like, obviously there's a bunch of options there. And then, like, I guess there's a kind of question like, what is the deployment mode of the sandwich? Right? Like 2 sidecars? Like containers, like a node? Like, I think we want the ability for the per node ztunnel to be able to work with a sandwiched sidecar. So I think we should probably state that as a requirement, but there are other ones available too. Like just another container with an envoy and a ztunnel in it.
Yeah, if I can chime in, I wonder if we're focusing too much. So on Monday, we kind of learned the most important thing is new user, right? To be able to onboard a new user. So to me, that means for sandwich, maybe waypoint is more important. I'm actually very cautious about for existing sidecar we do sandwich, because what about like the network policies that might be already working, right? If we have this sandwich thing, would that enforce a change on them? I also don't know, I don't see us having immediate user moving from sidecar to ambient. I'm just thinking loud here. Is that the first category of the problem we should solve for sandwich?
I think in the point I put something. So thing we should be concerned about is users enabling ztunnel by default in the entire cluster, because again they want security. They want all the existing application not using Istio to get the security and benefits of ztunnel. That will be the first step for pretty much anyone adopting ambient correctly. Now, if this happens, they don't interfere. I mean, the sidecar could just ignore the ztunnel. It's just like, like you have native security with WireGuard or something else. So you just have a security, and you end up with double encryption, because the sidecar will talk with another sidecar, will do whatever protocol. It's completely transparent. ztunnel is transparent by design. So we are okay from functionality point of view, but performance will be probably pretty bad, because again we double encrypt and we have all this. So I would treat it more like a correctness and performance problem, not necessarily as how we mix them or sandwich or another thing. It's just ztunnel itself for security and transport. Sidecars provide their own security, and how do we optimize it if necessary?
So I guess there's 2 adoption questions here, right? Lynn is saying like pure greenfield, which means there aren't even any sidecars. And then there's basically upgrade, right? Because what you described, Cost, is basically an upgrade, right?
Yeah.
Even if like anywhere where there's some Istio is to us an upgrade. And you're probably right, that they should just compose without interfering with each other. I don't think we test that today. So there's a question about testing it.
Yeah, I don't agree with any migration use case. I think some users will stay with sidecars for some use cases and will use ambient for others. I mean, we saw quite a few users who, sidecars are not necessarily bad. Are bad if we use them too much or if we don't use them properly. But we're not planning to deprecate or remove sidecars or necessarily to move people from. It's you pay for it, wonderful. If you are willing to pay and you know what you're doing, we don't need them to move.
Okay, so there's, I guess, the sidecar sandwich is a tool for us to simplify the upgrade process and to reduce the cost of maintenance for it. The waypoint sandwich is an architectural feature we think is a good idea for many of the same reasons we think it might be a good idea for sandwich, which is strong separation of layers and responsibilities leads to more composable systems. So there's a kind of priority decision, like which is more critical, waypoint sandwich or sidecar sandwich, depending on what we think is more important, upgrade or architectural improvements for the GA launch of Ambient.
Yeah.
And then there's just like straight up feasibility, like regardless of either architectural goal, how well is a sandwich going to work? And, you know, I think we all agree the simpler we can make Envoy, the better.
Hey, for some of us that might not have the context on the sandwich discussion, is this for the case of sidecar wanting to send traffic to a destination ambient pod that has waypoint? Is that the context?
That's part of it, yes. Right. So in upgrade environments, right, we will have at some point a mixture of sidecars and waypoints.
Right. And today you could, if a sidecar sends to a destination ambient with waypoint, it will happen and go to the waypoint. So that solution already works.
Yes. I believe.
So we're talking about
that the problem there is what the sidecar will do is it will encode the traffic using MTLS, which will make it opaque to the waypoint. So it'll just look like TCP instead of the waypoint seeing HTTP. That's one of the examples where the control plane needs to know this to tell the sidecar not to encrypt the traffic. I hope that makes sense.
well, the sidecar will use HPON because it knows it's talking to an ambient.
Only if you enable HPON.
No.
Which you need to do given you're operating in a mixed environment.
Right, but then the Z tunnel is not performing any function, right? So the sidecar is not using Z tunnel. What we're trying to do is to have the sidecar leverage Z tunnel to perform that function.
Right.
Right, so that's what we mean by layering. That all HBone is done by Z tunnel.
Okay, so we're talking about not having this sidecar directly do HBone signaling or whatever signaling is needed for HBone, but have another sidecar, a Z-tunnel sidecar, do it for it.
If possible, because again, we still need to pass metadata when sidecar is doing L7. So maybe not do TLS, maybe not do the routing, maybe not do the redirect to waypoint, but some form of higher level communication when the, I don't think we can avoid it because we lose information.
So which metadata are you concerned about, Costin?
Service VIP in particular. So if the sidecar is doing the load balancing at L7,
so
we need to pass the VIP.
Yeah, so there's VIP preservation, right? And then waypoint, like metadata propagation about source still needs to work just like it needs to work. Well, for everything.
And by the way, the other way, so we discussed in the past Z-tunnel to pass identity information to sidecar. If we want to avoid the double encryption, if we launch a double encryption is okay, then no problem. We don't have absolutely no problem because again, it will be just Z-tunnel do its job.
So VIP and metadata propagation, right? Those two things.
And then we can optimize the double encryption later on. Yeah.
No. If we are okay with double encryption, we don't have to do anything at all. I mean, Z-tunnel is exactly like WireGuard. There is no difference. It's you use WireGuard or use Z-tunnel as CNI. who will notice. From sidecar point of view, it's not visible.
Right, but then the waypoint has to pick up the complexity of the existing Istio encryption, which is a pain.
Yes, that's a pain, yes. But that's life. We have the code.
Okay. Coming back to the requirements, so I guess, Keith, sorry, you had your hand up.
Yes, you want to go for the next? We can't hear you, Keith, by the way. No, we can't.
But we sense your presence.
That better?
Yeah, whoops.
Okay, sorry. Didn't receive when I was using the wrong microphone on the sheet.
Same as Steven.
Yeah. How many Istio? Sorry. Anyway, I'm still trying to get, and apologies, this is probably just because I'm coming from low context when I wasn't involved with Istio when a lot of the sandwiching conversations were happening. But I think I'm still unclear on, and Louis explained a little bit, but I'm still a bit unclear on the motivation for sandwiching. From what I understand, is sandwiching a convenience for us to simplify XCS configuration for Envoy? Is that the primary motivation?
That's certainly a large one, right? But it's also supporting the evolvability of two systems separately, which in the long run is going to make for a more composable system. Right? Like logically, applications are sandwiched, right? They're sandwiched by a sidecar or they're sandwiched by zTunnel.
Right, right.
And so you can put whatever code you want inside an application. We had a discussion last week about if vendors wanted to swap out waypoints, right? If we formalized how they could be sandwiched, just like we have formalized how we sandwich applications, that's probably a good idea, right? It also allows for like co-evolution, right? We don't have to put two things in lockstep. Waypoints and zTunnel can evolve independently, as long as there's some well-defined contract between them. That's definitely a benefit, right? In a lot of different ways.
Okay, got it. So this is the sandwiching conversation is more, because when I hear sandwich, I'm thinking operationally, this is a second sidecar, it's a second container, but that's not necessarily implied by the conversation.
Not at all. No.
Okay, got it. So that's really helpful. I'm glad I asked this question because that's a really helpful clarification. So what we're saying is really with sandwiching is that there is a Envoy sidecar that is also captured or otherwise composed with the zTunnel in some topology, whether that be on the node. Okay, got it. So we're adding an extra hop, and the idea is to both, as far as the operational upgrade, to limit the complexity of that's a user benefit, but also to allow for the two systems to have a evolution, to have a distinct evolution in the future, and be able to provide a smooth experience in that direction as well. That's the foundation of this conversation, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Like if you look, like the East-West gateway is kind of like a pseudo-sandwiched thing, right, in the network that performs a network bridging function. Today we use Envoy for it. We'll probably use zTunnel for it. And there's a well-defined contract for that. So like we have some examples of in-network sandwiching, and we have some examples of application sandwiching, but we're like looking at codifying them a little bit better. And then obviously that brings a lot of implementation and maintenance benefits if it can make things simpler. Like if you ran on top of a CNI that gave you MTLS everywhere, or secure networking, and your security team was happy with whatever the hell secure networking that was, and you ran an Envoy sidecar, it would be sandwiched, right?
Yep.
For this decision.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, WireGuard or zTunnel are exactly the same same thing. I mean, completely 100% CNI and Kubernetes compatibility. You should not even know they are there. However, it has a cost because we do extra complexity and the waypoint and other things are a bit beefy. But if we ignore that and we just are accepting that it's double encryption, there is no problem. I mean, it works. It's fine. We had sandwiches for a long time.
Yeah. So then, how to do that optimally. And then there are some pieces of information we like to know about the source in a reliable way to implement policy and telemetry when we go through the infrastructure we deliver.
Got it. So this is inherently a conversation about composability. For some reason, sandwich, I meant to model the sandwich as two things next to each other, so I went straight to the operational side. But this is just about composing
layers,
functions, composing layers, composing functions, policy, etc., and having discussions about one is double encryption okay, and things like that. Got it. Okay. And so today with sidecars and Ambient. The current idea or design for that is that sidecars would be not interacting with zTunnel whatsoever. Client sidecar would have to send to waypoints, and then server sidecars you wouldn't send to a waypoint. You would send directly to that server sidecar. Is that the kind of things as they stand today? Okay, got it. And so we're tweaking. We're discussing tweaking that. All right, I'm caught up. Thank you.
Sure about your analogy, Kelsey. That's pretty funny.
I still think waypoint sandwich is more important given the context of transition is short and we're not going to have people transition in day one.
Waypoint is interesting because again, we'll need to be somehow compatible with sidecars that do MTLS. And so I agree with you that waypoint is where we need to be most careful. I mean, where we probably need to put most effort to make sure that transition happens. And their gateway, we already generate configuration for Istio is not a problem.
So I guess I think Lynn is asserting the higher level thing is for Ambient GA, do we or do we not have to support an upgrade? Like greenfield versus upgrade. And we're going to have to make a choice as a project about which of those targets to hit first. If it's only greenfield cost, then we don't care about the sidecars, right?
And I don't think we should even consider the case of migrating. Or I mean, I don't know if you saw that Twitter or last week. Some people will not. I mean, they will keep using sidecar and they want to use sidecar and they don't want to be, scared by the fact that we are. I mean, when you say migrate, it suggests that we are going to force them at some point, or we are going to deprecate sidecars or anything like that. I don't think that's a goal here. The goal is to, allow people to choose the right solution and to have them work together and seamlessly.
So for those folks who want to use sidecars, the sandwich sidecar is a good option for us from a maintenance standpoint. Is it the first target we need to hit for Ambient GA? Debatable.
Well, it already works, so there's no problem for that. I mean, two namespaces using sidecars, no problem.
We haven't tested it, but I take your point.
If it doesn't work, then we have a serious bug because other application is broken. So it's.
I think mostly we'll see bugs in the CNI, right? We'll have to fix that.
We need to fix them anyway. So that I mean, having 100% compatibility with CNI and with Kubernetes, that's a no.
No, our CNI.
Yeah, over CNI, the redirection.
Our CNI does not set this the right way.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, zTunnel, when it's installed by default, it should be transparent, just like any other CNI, and compose perfectly with the CNI, not change any semantic.
Okay, but we need to test it.
Yeah, it's probably require code change, right? Because over CNI today watches certain thing for redirection, yeah, and sidecar was excluded, yeah.
Okay. How do other people feel about the relative prioritization of greenfield ambient, migration, and sidecar architectural improvements, right, by leveraging zTunnel? I guess those are the three options. Which
I think Mitch's feedback that he was able to gather about ambient that he presented to TOC on Monday kind of points heavily to optimizing for greenfield ambient users at this stage. That's my personal opinion.
Another point to think about is that people would create hybrid scenarios only if they perceive ambient to be roughly at the same level of stability as sidecars. You wouldn't mix two technologies which are at very different levels of stability in the same cluster. So you wouldn't say, okay, I've got my sidecar mesh which have been stable for 2 years, and I'm going to turn it into a hybrid mesh with this ambient which is not yet stable, right? You wouldn't sort of mix two functions of very different stability initially, which would imply that they would start with greenfield and then once there's a perception that it is roughly similar stability, then they would create hybrid scenarios.
All right, I created a poll.
Yeah.
People
How do we access the poll for people not so familiar with Google
in
Meet?
the bottom right-hand corner, there's the
I see it.
triangle, square, circle, activities.
Yeah, see it. Thanks.
And to clarify, this is for ambient GA, not beta, but GA.
Yeah. I mean, we could argue whether it should be for beta or not, but
If it was beta, it'd be even easier conversation for me. Like, I think it's even less of a discussion for talking beta. But in fact, I think we already decided for beta, but just wanted to clarify that GA is a separate conversation.
sure.
Is that poll for GA or for beta?
You know, it's probably for both, honestly, because what you
It
do
is
between
for
beta and
both.
GA is supposed to make sure that everything is working in a stable fashion. Really
From
changing the
beta
feature
to
set.
promote. Yeah.
Right. So
I think it's less about a priority as much as it is a rollout order. If the greenfield is top vote, that means we roll out greenfield support for ambient first to beta and then to GA.
Yep.
And then once that rollout has progressed, whether it's beta or GA, we begin on other features like sidecar migration, optimization, etc.
yeah. Or maybe I should have written it. Can we ship without, right? Where each one of these is a level of feature. But I can't ask you, the poll doesn't let you stack rank things.
I'm a bit late to the party, but
Right, well,
if we're talking about greenfield, I am reasonably in favor. It's a newish idea to me, but I'm reasonably in favor of an L4 only beta or GA, rolling that out first, adding waypoints to that as a secondary priority.
Yeah, I actually, sorry, I talked before I was called, but Mitch, I was thinking about this the other day, actually talking with Lynn, and I think I agree. Like if we talk about greenfield L4, I think if we because if the point here is adoption, which it is, then, and the reality is that the core use case of Istio is and always has been MTLS, then I would say that, yeah, like targeting if we can get people to use this, right? Like that's going to take a few months anyway. And so if we get people using it, then the natural follow-on can follow on, as it were.
Sanjeev, I think you were next.
I would be slightly not in favor of a greenfield being L4 only. It could be seen as a limited CNI, which is less functional than existing CNIs if you did L4 only. I mean, I appreciate this. And also from some data I have heard, people will invariably have some amount of L7 policy or processing. Otherwise, they could have just used a secure CNI to begin with. So we could limit the amount of L7 functionality for beta, but or these hybrid scenarios and so on. But maybe just doing L4 only would not be compelling enough, perhaps. But we can certainly skew the messaging to emphasize on the however we want to emphasize, like, like use this release for zero trust testing and greenfield limited L7 or something like that, but at least have some amount of L7 component.
Sanjeev, that's a really good point. And I'll say, while I like the idea of L4 only, it's a fresh idea to me and it hasn't really had time to bake. I think we need to do some research about how it would stack up against the CNI and whether that would be a favorable comparison. So I wouldn't push for that decision today, but it's a new idea that has intrigued me.
Sure.
I think the other side of this is also, and I recognize this is more of a steering question, but from a branding positioning perspective, I would push back a little bit against what Eitan said. In my opinion, if there's no L7 functionality, then that's not really Istio. When as much as the hallmark of Mesh has been MTLS, what Istio is known for is its wide variety of feature sets, the traffic routing, L7 observability. Like that's what people are coming to Istio to accomplish. And so to ship something and call it Istio, and then to not have any L7 capability I think sets us up for some disappointment on a user perspective. And it also, I think, whether we want to or not, it puts us into direct competition with Cilium. And that's a battle that, on the face of it, perception-wise, just shipping zTunnel, we're not going to win that battle, in my opinion. Like if we're talking about something on the node that is doing encryption. I mean, walks like a CNI, talks like a CNI. It's a CNI. And so I have concerns on that aspect of it, that we're not setting ourselves. We wouldn't be setting ourselves up to win if you went that direction.
Yeah, so I want to chime in quickly. I don't think we are saying we are releasing ambient beta or GA with just zTunnel. What I think everybody is trying to say, at least that's in my mind, is what we can start to say, look, the layer 4 functionality of ambient is production ready. You guys can use it to achieve mutual TLS, which, by the way, no other CNI can do it. You can do it, the real mutual TLS, without any configuration from you, right? And I think that's a big selling point. And we're working on adding Waypoint next. It's not like we're not releasing Waypoint next immediately, right? It's about solve this chicken and egg problem. People are not trying ambient. Give us the feedback until everything they want is ready, which will take a very long time. Sanjeev, I think you are next.
I'm not sure that zTunnel is production ready or will be. Some of the open issues regarding auth policy and bypassing some of the CNI capabilities, I think, need to be addressed before it can be production ready.
Right. I don't mean to claim zTunnel is production ready, but that could be like a first attempt for us to declare something production ready. Let's say ambient has 50 features, right? If there's 1 or 2 or 3 important feature we want, I think zTunnel would be part of it that we want to declare as the first batch that's production ready.
Yes, I mean, we definitely want the beta release the testers of the beta release to significantly test L4 only capability. But I guess we can, as we approach beta, we can decide the exact messaging.
Ambient grid field does not only mean L400, just to answer your question. I don't want to
I
get.
think we introduced a separate thing here, which is probably a different thing.
Yes, it was not included in the poll. So there's a kind of project management question then, like what target do we manage to for beta? Do we manage to a target where we prioritize L4 being like, so we steer more effort into L4, or do we manage to a target where we try to balance the effort between L4 and L7? That seems to be kind of, and what is the preference there? I seem to hear a general preference for managing towards a beta where L4 and L7 are both in reasonable states for production-like testing.
Yes, agreed.
And that doing anything other than that is going to hinder our ability to attract a tester or an adopter. The counter argument being, if L4 was more production ready, we could take a marketing effort to entice more people to just test that functionality. Marketing is often a question for steering, but
the other thing that I want to, I think, emphasize to your point, Keith, is that Istio has always been about, L7 like has always been about doing a lot of different things. And I do want to say that gateway, I think what we're specifically talking about is kind of gamma, right? It's the service to service. Whereas gateway, at least in my mind, would still very much be included because there's really nothing changing about that story. And of course, maybe that, I don't know if that changes your calculus at all or thinking, but just something that I think is worth mentioning.
I think I'm inclined to agree with Sanjeev and Keith that changing the messaging around it, the structural messaging around Istio, it's a little premature to do that. We need some of both L4 and L7 in the beta. We may choose to do it later, but we're not set up or ready to do it yet. Right, like just to add, like as a counter argument, Sanjeev, like as Lynn mentioned, no other CNI does MTLS right. Like there is no equivalent in the market. Right, so looking like a CNI and walking like a CNI, but actually doing MTLS is differentiated.
True, although CNIs do full encryption of all traffic, including UDP.
IPsec and WordGuard, right?
Yes, IPsec
right.
is fixed. Yeah. So if MTLS,
yes.
I mean, yes, they don't have MTLS, but they do encrypt all traffic, which Ambient does not currently, as Eternal does not.
Yes.
And they can combine that with the fact that they have network policy based on service accounts to do essentially an alternate form of mutual authentication. And now they've also produced, Cilium has also got its own sort of proprietary mutual authentication thing. So they can kind of claim both MTLS and full encryption.
Well, they can't claim MTLS, and like there's a big security problem with what Cilium does. Like if we're just in the realm of marketing, what Cilium is doing is currently dangerous. Right, and we can talk about that. We do talk about
it. Their clone of Google transport security, ALS or ALTS or whatever.
No, it's not even a clone of that. Like
yeah, I don't know what the point of this discussion. I mean, yes, they do encryption, we do encryption, many people do encryption. It's not, that's reality. I mean, that's our business to do MTLS and encryption and security. We have policies. We may discuss how to better interoperate with them, how if the user happens to use them, how we can, integrate, but that's reality. We cannot change it.
I think the original point here is that is the zTernal MTLS story strong enough to just stand on its own? I think we seem to agree that beta release should have both L4 and L7. That's really all we need to worry about for the near term.
Yeah, I mean, it's a marketing question. It's not a technical one.
Yeah, we should ask Steering to weigh in. There's also a time to market question, right? How long do we have? Well, Cilium's generating lots of noise too. Mitch, I think you're next.
Yeah, I guess the way that I think about it is not so much like carving L7 out of the product. Instead,
Right.
it's saying the things that fit in early on the user adoption journey, those should be the things that reach maturity first so that we can get feedback on them early. The adoption journey, as far as I understand it, is going to involve installing, obviously, has to be ready to roll, and then probably sitting at layer 4 for a while and waiting to see if that's enough for you before making the decision to incrementally adopt layer 7. In that case, I think there's value to saying, hey, you can begin your journey. Layer 4 is ready for production. Layer 7 is not yet ready for production, and it's going to take a little bit longer for us to get there. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think the question there, Mitch, is it ready for test? The layer 7.
Unfortunately, we're not finding people willing to test, right? Like if it's alpha.
I totally agree with your incremental adoption story and how we should align with it. It's in the release. Where's the bulkhead? Where is the user just going to be forced to stop? Ian, sorry.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, piggybacking off what Lynn and Mitch were talking about, I think the advantage if we dropped L4 first would be that folks who adopt it are starting their ambient journey. They're not off doing something else and then they got to start from square one with Istio later. They're on the path, and that's not nothing.
Yeah. And they can try Waypoint too. It's just we don't claim Waypoint production ready, or they can still explore Waypoint function, right? Sanjeev?
So I think we are mostly saying the same thing, which is that we would ship both L4 and L7 functionality, perhaps emphasize L4 more, perhaps emphasize the differentiation with MTLS more, but we wouldn't not support else. I mean, we would still have waypoints, right? So I think we are all kind of saying the same thing here. One other point I want to just briefly mention is that going back to the hybrid discussion, the moment you have to interact with a gateway, you are automatically in hybrid mode, right? Because gateways are Envoy based. So any ingress gateway or even egress gateway that interacts with an ambient pod is sort of exercising hybrid functionality, right? Pardon me if I'm misstating that. So even if you have a pure ambient mesh, but the gateways are, they are essentially Envoys doing H-mode signaling, so that we are sort of starting down the hybrid journey there. Anyway, just to wrap up, basically the point is that I think we seem to agree that we want to have both L4 and L7, perhaps emphasize L4 and MTLS more so that people can get started with just that. But the other point is about, hybrid interop. And if we want gateways to be able to send to ambient pods, then we're already also starting down the hybrid journey because we want gateways to interact with hybrid ambient pods.
Well, and that could be a good reason to get the at least the open face sandwich concept going, right? Where those gateways don't do HBone. They do their traditional role, send the traffic probably plane with the the node Z tunnel taking it, and then it's ambient from there.
Okay, so you just use,
Possibility, not necessarily the solution we need.
true. You're saying just use hairpinning for gateway to ambient.
I think half sandwiching. not
Yeah, I
hairpinning.
don't think it's hairpinning, at least not as I understand it, but yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of the problem with the waypoint is less about L7 and more about the complex, like, magic, essentially, that the Z tunnel has to do behind the scenes to make the L7, to make it seamless. And there are still a lot of holes there that we need to figure out. So it's less about L7 and interop and more about the auto management of like traffic within that scenario.
Right, and also the API, the authorization API, the hairpinning, there's just a lot of things related to waypoint that's not settled. Keith, I think you are
sure.
next. Or maybe Carsten. I think Keith is next.
It sounds like Carsten and I talked a bit in the chat. It feels like we're circling around a bit of an existential question with Istio, just in different ways. But it sounds like the question is like, is Istio a CNI? Do we want to make that purposeful decision that Istio is going to be a CNI, work with network policy? Because in my mind, I could be wrong, but I think that's the only way that we are able to position the project to users in a way that makes sense and doesn't cause confusion. I have to issue a slight correction to something I said earlier. Yes, Istio is known for having, for being an L7 piece, project and having a bunch of L7 features. But again, to reference Mitch's feedback that he received on Ambient, a lot of the people that we're targeting with Ambient, a lot of people who are going to be using the project are going to be greenfield users. So what are those users going to, how are those users going to interpret a L4 only project? Where are they going to be looking for from an L4 only, or rather I'll say L4 GA piece of functionality? I think the point still stands though, that they're going to be comparing it to, what do I get with Cilium? What do I get with, any other, with my cloud CNI? And so if adoption is the goal, if adoption and getting users to test this in the product scenario is the motivator for this whole L4 shipping discussion, then the question that we need to answer is, are we going to be able to make a user say yes to Istio, L4 Istio specifically, over any other CNI on the market? Because that's the question users are going to ask.
And I don't think anyone proposed that we ship only Z tunnel by itself and nothing else. We are shipping Istio composed of sidecars, gateways, Z tunnel 2, because that will be a new feature of Istio. And users will be able to use, greenfield users means that I may or may not use sidecars in some namespaces, and I deploy Z tunnel so I get security and the L4 policies for all the other workloads that currently I cannot use sidecar for, because sidecar has all the bug and fork and other problems. We are not removing sidecars. We still L7. We still have gateways which are usable with Z tunnel as well. There is no isolation. I don't think anyone has proposed, or I haven't heard any proposal that we just ship, Ambient as a standalone thing with only Z tunnel or only Z tunnel and waypoint. It's still gateways with L7 and the entire bundle that we have.
Yeah, only thing we're proposing is if it makes sense, we can progress Z tunnel first as ready for recommend to user to explore in production. By the way, even just for mutual TLS, I know user just adopted Istio for mutual TLS, right? There are different organizations where their security team wants mutual TLS, and that is valued, right? And today they can't actually do that with Sidecar, some of them, because the compatibility issue of their application with Sidecar, they could potentially solve it with zTunnel and Ambient.
So I want to reiterate that I think while this L4 idea is interesting, that L4 might progress first, it's premature. We need a doc. We need a place to evaluate it, to consider it from a lot of different angles, so that we can make sure we're getting feedback from people who don't happen to be attending today, and formalize it. So I might propose that those of us who are advocating for this head off and try to put something together within the next 1 to 2 weeks to discuss. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, I think the TOC should own that.
To me.
Since we're going to kick that out to the TOC, maybe we can get back to the technical discussion of the sandwich.
Yeah, let's do that.
So I guess, Stephen, you've been trying to do sandwich stuff. How's it going?
It's going well. It's definitely pretty unoptimized, and there's some hacky code involved, but like I think it's viable for sure. Like I don't think that's a huge question anymore. At least I've been focused mostly on sandwiching waypoints. As far as like performance or just feasibility, like it should work. Like
Right, so there are no obvious glaring impediments right now.
no.
In terms of simplification of Envoy config, how much, quote quotes, better does it look?
I mean,
subjectively.
I won't compare them, but if you just wanted to read the Envoy config generated for a sandwiched waypoint, it's super simple. It's like almost, you could write it by hand if you really needed to.
Okay, so it's kind of meeting the make Envoy simpler goal.
Yeah.
Pretty handily. Okay. Well, yeah, we still have to fix the metadata problem, Custon. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yes.
Like that. Not all problems are solved.
But yeah, I mean, I saw a PR from Quad. I didn't really take a good look at it, but was that essentially MDS? This was like last week or end of last week.
Probably.
But yeah, I was
Is
hoping
Quad still here? I think he dropped.
Have you tested? What about the Envoy memory footprint? I don't know if you've measured it yet.
I have not.
Okay. I mean, obviously, if the config footprint is lower, we would expect the memory footprint to be lower, which is nice. So at some point, but directionally, you think overall signals are positive.
Yeah. I mean, like, to be fair, I haven't like stripped out the irrelevant parts of the config that are dormant yet. So I mean, I haven't really been able to measure that yet. But yeah, it's just much simpler. And if you needed to debug it, it would be quite a bit easier at this point. Pulling in the stuff is definitely something that needs to be done soon to at least see if that has issues.
All right. And when you talk about performance, like what are you seeing?
Throughput is still not great. Like throughput, like easily, like on top of what we would already drop with zTunnel, we just dropped that amount again because we're doing another two zTunnel captures and decaps. But latency is not majorly impacted at all. Like on a relatively decent load, it's an extra millisecond, but it's pretty fuzzy.
Okay, so we still have some optimization paths to look at, and then we have to decide our threshold.
I think for throughput and performance, we need to compare, what is the performance of two pods communicating with iPerf for TCP level with 2Z tunnels versus, I don't know, WireGuard or whatever else is in there. Because that's L4 apples to apples. Other than that, sidecar too, we add, if we are as fast as WireGuard, then it should be completely transparent if we swap the two. So there are two orthogonal areas of optimization. One is the TCP traffic. We must optimize the tunnel until it's super fast. And again, sidecar, if you have sidecars, or that's life. I mean, that's their behavior. It needs to be comparable with the current numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like we obviously, the sidecar versus waypoint comparison it's a little bit of a pain for us, right? Because we set ourselves up for it. But certainly comparing a sandwiched envoy inside a WireGuard network is a reasonable competitive comparison. I think we'd still like to have understand relative performance to both of those things, Gustin.
No, I agree.
Okay. But you're continuing to iterate on this, Stephen. So
Yeah,
we'll check in. But at some point we'll have to make a decision based on some detail. But extrapolating from that, we could probably make the same set of assertions about the sidecar too, right? Like the config will get simpler. There's a performance hit. We haven't figured out what based all the optimization paths to mitigate the performance hit. Because there's no reason for it to be different for sidecar than waypoint structurally.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I think it's just Z-tunnel is not optimized at all, really yet.
All right. Well, that's encouraging. Like, I'm happy to hear that. So. Sanjeev, you expressed a dangerous opinion.
I do tend to shoot off my mouth, but I'm definitely would like to probe more into that. But maybe that's a different discussion.
Yeah, certainly that is incorrect if you care about FIPS compliance. That is 100% not okay. It's also not okay for a few architectural reasons, which I think, Lynn, your blog post touches on.
Yeah, I'm going to publish it as a PR later today, and you guys are welcome to review. Hopefully, it will be published soon. Istio.io.
But they could certainly evolve towards proper MTLS as well, right? This could just be an interim solution.
The only way they could do that is to do it through user space. They could not do it with eVPN.
Well, we're talking about Cilium iterating towards MTLS, is that right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, real
So
mutual
if you
TLS.
if you look at their CN or KubeCon talk upcoming in Chicago, Liz is giving a talk on the service mesh track. As far as I can tell, they are doubling down and expressing that some parts of MTLS are not important. You don't actually need them, and they've carved out all the important ones. So it does not sound like their objective is to iterate towards MTLS.
Yeah.
Well, but they can certainly do that if the customers need it, right? So, I mean, this is what they'll message until they have an alternative.
The only way for them to do that, Sanjeev, is to implement something that looks like Z-tunnel.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to dig more into that at some point.
Feel free to ping me offline or to ping Lynn or anyone else in the TOC and give you all the background.
Sounds good.
All right, I guess we have last item. Should we move to the next item agenda briefly before we end? Oh, is there anything?
So what's the next? Sorry.
Yeah, is there anything else you want to discuss? Yeah, I just want to share that a couple of us have been working on a first pass of categorize ambient feature status. I believe the link should be accessible for folks in the community. So definitely take a look just to, let me know if the category looks right. I think this would help us to decide, what is really critical for beta as we try to work together to release beta to our users.
Hey, Lynn, is this a recapture of what's in your ambient beta doc, just in a spreadsheet format?
It's not a direct recapture. This is actually categorized using existing Istio sidecar feature status and apply it to ambient. So there's probably more to do than this from that doc, but these are the key features of Istio. People come into Istio to look for Istio to do for sidecars, right? So this is trying to assess where we are with those features, which ones we have automated testing, we feel it's close to beta, not so close to beta. So I'm basically entry based on where I understood things are, but I certainly would love to hear people feedback from everyone in the community. I'll ping John too when he's back, because he probably knows way more than where I think things are.
I guess, Francis, so you're probably trying to figure out how to reconcile this with any tracking stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to reconcile. Well, we haven't got to the tracking part yet. I'm trying to reconcile this with the dog.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Hopefully, this sheet is maybe a little bit more immediate for people.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, do you guys have any update for the metadata service? I know Stephen was asking. I wasn't sure if Carsten, you know more about that, because I feel like metadata service is pretty critical for Sandwich, right? So do we have an owner for that, or what's the latest on that?
I know John had a PR that he didn't merge because it was not clear. And we had some discussions about if we can have some proper metadata server or a better way to pass the metadata, because it was a bit strange.
Well, I think we should probably launch and iterate that internally. Obviously, it's not a user-facing feature, right? So if we can unblock Steven with something that's a little hacky, it's probably a good idea, so we can get to end faster.
Yes, and also if it's internal, if it's not exposed to the user, we have the options to use the Nginx or the other discussions we had where we use prefix or it's part of the protocol. Remember, we discussed the HTTP metadata as exposed to the users, and that's where it's a bit.
Yeah, no, we should. That is not a feature. Yeah.
Exactly. And then we have the option. I mean, there is the Nginx that is built into Envoy. There are all kinds of options that are SOCs and other things where we can pass metadata transparently between.
Yeah, but we should make the lowest common denominator work, so we can start with that.
Did you say John has? I'm sorry. Did you say John has a PR or quad?
No, he had a PR for an HTTP exposing the peer metadata, peer certificate, and everything through an HTTP. Just like the MDS servers on Google, Amazon, and so forth. He didn't merge it because, again, it was not clear if it's the right interface, and I don't know exactly why he didn't merge it. But if it's an internal thing that we use to optimize the communication between Envoy and cTunnel, and not an exposed user API, then it's a separate discussion. And AJ Proxy, I think, is merged, and we support it now. I think someone had a PR to add it to Istio as a supported feature. So
you mean the proxy protocols, right?
Yeah, the proxy protocols, AJ, the proxy protocol. Yeah, we are not the only one.
I know there are a few. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we should resurrect that and get it in, but obviously not make it. It's not publicly accessible or documented feature.
For now, yeah.
Because right? We also want that for telemetry and
Right, for metrics, yeah. Tracing.
And
Yeah, exactly.
authorization. Okay.
Yep.
Stephen, let me know if you're having trouble tracking down that PR. We can figure it out.
I think this is the one I was thinking of, but I don't think this gives us everything we need.
Yeah, I thought Costin referred to a much older PR by John.
I think that this is the Envoy side, right?
No, it's in Z-tunnel. Some code in Z-tunnel where Z-tunnel is exposing an HTTP port. And on the port, you get, you pass the tuples of the for port IP, and you get back the certificate. I'll ask him and then try to find the PR.
Okay.
I had it patched on my workspace.
Yeah, maybe you can stick it with co-op offline about that one too. Sanjeev?
Yeah, one quick thing since we already passed our time. I'm actually working on some user guides for Ambient, and for the Z-tunnel users guide, we have a section set aside for interrupt with sidecars. Should we not talk about interrupt with sidecars at all for now? I mean, the purpose of the user guide is to help people who are testing Ambient right now in alpha and beta. So, or should we go ahead and include some text there with some caveats that this is all sort of subject to change, but it at least allows people to experiment with mixing sidecars and Ambient? Should we include that in the user's guide or should we not?
That's a great question. It works, right? As long as they enable the right flag.
I think as long as you heavily caveat that that feature is marked as experimental,
Yeah.
I think it's
Probably
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll include that. That way people can at least exercise it and we'll add the caveats.
Right, yeah. No, there's no
Yeah.
guarantee that the way that it works now is how it's going to work when we're done.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I should be
I'll
done. Several people in the community have been very helpful. Benjamin Leggett in particular has been very helpful, and Lynn and John and others. So thank you. I'll send that out for reviews in the coming days.
Well, thank you so much, Sanjeev. And I hope you are helping us mentor our student too.
Yes. So
Yeah,
so
thank you.
and thanks to you as well, Lynn.
Continue.
All right, should we wrap it up? Anything else we should be discussing? All right, thanks
everybody.
everybody for joining. Yeah,
Thanks, everyone.
bye.
Thanks. Bye.